Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
India's investments in Africa have risen above $33 billion. We've seen Indian companies invest particularly in technology and communications companies, in the manufacturing sector, especially automotives, and in certain areas of mining. Many people see the role of India and China as competitive as they try to grow their market share. In Africa, the Indians always arguing that their relationship with Africa is a historical one, predicated on democratic ideals, issues around liberation, struggle, moral support, and that it's a more qualitative relationship. We're finding out more about this growing relation between India and Africa, particularly now that South Africa is a member of the elite league of Brazil, Russia, India, and China emerging markets. We're speaking to the chairperson of the State Bank of India, Pratip Chaudhuri. He's our captain of industry tonight. Now, obviously, before the break, we were talking about the very sketchy subject of nationalization, how it happened in India, whether it could work in Africa, and you're emphasizing that government can be a shareholder. It should never be made to run the day-to-day of a company. Now, in Africa, we're very nervous when we hear state ownership, state shareholding. Are we right to be nervous?
Yes, I think it is not right to, totally alter the structure. We also underwent those kind of convulsions when the nationalization happened. What government could do, just except for directing, like in India what they do, that if you want lending to agriculture to be increased, so there are policy banks, they say, okay, if you lend $100 to agriculture, I make money available to you at 4% and 5% or whatever is the lower rate, you go and on lend at a reasonable rate. But then the banks should be encouraged. But if the banks are to lend to out of the regular pool, it would be against their commercial interests. And secondly, overall global situation being what it is, nationalization perhaps at this point could be a bit of leading to nervousness.
What we do know, the silver lining though, is that the economies of Asia and Africa have really survived the global credit crisis, and as a result, a lot of emerging markets are looking very attractive for foreign investors. Bank consolidation seems to be the growing trend right now in Africa, as many international banks want to come in and partner with local banks and tap into this new market of a huge population that's unbanked. Is that something that the State Bank of India is considering?
Oh sure, because we have at least more than 30 foreign banks in India, but that has not led to the Indian banks withering away. Indian banks have emerged stronger, so let as many banks come in, because they will bring new products, they will bring new ideas, and the whole country would benefit. And today, because of the foreign banks, you will have banks like Citi and Barclays, where in very senior positions overseas in their head offices, Indians are occupying very senior positions. That wouldn't have happened if these banks had not come into India. And Africa, with English and French being the language, is very well poised to internationalize itself.
Are we going to see the State Bank of India raise its profile in Africa?
Most certainly. Africa is a very important part, and wherever there is a market access, we have come in, and we don't come in as for ripping up the country and making profits and taking it back. We are there for a long haul. Not only I say about State Bank of India, all banks from India are pursuing that philosophy, and we are more of term lenders, that we lend for creating fixed assets, creating output, creating jobs, and creating value to the society.
What sort of strategy would you pursue in Africa? Would you be supporting Indian multinationals as they enter Africa, or would you be looking for organic opportunities on the continent?
Both. I mean, I think we should be doing what we do the best. So especially when Indian companies come here, and they are eminently, needed when the Africa welcomes them, but they are not very well known in Africa. So they are looking for funding. So we fill in the gap. But at the same time, because we have a good expertise in aggregating the small pool of savings from different individuals, so we can bring that to bear here. And banking is a very technology intensive business. And India in the last 15 years has made a mark for itself, particularly in the IT services area. So when Indian banks come, Indian IT companies will come, and that will open up tremendous opportunities for the African citizens of Africa.
I mean, you spoke about entrepreneurship earlier on, and this is also something we're grappling with, how to grow the middle class, the private sector rather, in Africa, and how to ensure that entrepreneurs are at the forefront of that business development. Sometimes we're worried that maybe we just don't have the ingenuity. Is that a fair statement?
I think entrepreneurs are there in all societies. It is how the society values entrepreneurs. So from tomorrow, if any country values a person by the number of jobs he has created and not by the number of jobs he has held, I think the whole outlook would change. In most of the societies where entrepreneurs, which breeds entrepreneurs and have been greatly successful, are those where the entrepreneurs are respected for what they contribute to the society. So once you have many more role models, once along with the political leaders and freedom fighters, you also bring in entrepreneurs because they are useful citizens of the society, that would be a game-changing event.
So, Pratip Chaudhuri, when you are not at the helm of power at the State Bank of India, what are you doing?
See, I have very little time for myself. My family also complains. But yes, I like Indian classical music because that is a great heritage, and that is something we have learnt and lived from the early days. And I also read books particularly on philosophy and political thoughts and economics.
I mean, you say you love Indian classical music, and many people are looking at the new generation of Indians, the ones coming out of Harvard and Oxford, and how cosmopolitan they are and how sophisticated and worldly they are. And there's this fear that they're losing touch with the richness of their heritage. It's also many young Africans are accused of forgetting where they come from. Is that something you're concerned about?
Yeah, that's something that I see in my family also, because they find it too difficult to grapple with so many things, and particularly Indian classical music requires a lot of time, so which the youngsters may not be able to do. Yes, that's a real challenge, and I don't think I have any easy answers to that.
Oh my goodness. And you also have a love for the outdoors, particularly the mountains. Why is that?
No, mountains, this is the nature, because mountains, particularly we have the Himalayas. Now, as we look back and as we look how useful the Himalayas are, they are collecting all the snow, and the snow melting rivers, and rivers are the lifeline of India. So, mountains serve a great purpose, and when I go before a mountain, it gives me a feeling how small I am, how big the mountains are. So, it introduces, or it brings in humility in the person, which I think is very important.
And do you often need that kind of reality check to look at a mountain and remember that you're a microcosm of a much bigger social order?
Yes, philosophically speaking, yes, absolutely.
The people who've influenced your career the most?
People who influenced my career, some of the bosses, and I think some of the business leaders from India, particularly the IT services company. There is a gentleman who is highly respected, is Mr. Narayan Murthy of a company called Infosys, and he, from a middle class background, rose to become an entrepreneur, and today is a globally respected figure. So he proved that in spite of adhering to every rule, in spite of paying your taxes honestly, you can really build up a big business.
Yeah. The one lesson that somebody taught you in life, it could be a life's lesson, it could be a business lesson, but the one thing you always remember no matter where you are in life, and the lesson that you'd like somebody to remember, what would that be?
That would be, don't be too credulous. If somebody comes and tells you something adverse about somebody, do always cross-check with that person. Then in what context it was said, and every time I have done that, I thought that I was better off doing that, because if I had not done that, I would have come to very erroneous conclusions.
Yeah, okay, so emotional intelligence is also very important.
Yes. And another thing is that always be willing to share your whatever you call responsibility and power. One person can do only as much. But if you co-opt those who you think are your rivals or competitors, great things can happen.
Yeah. I think that's a poignant place to leave it. I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed your stay in South Africa, and we hope to see more of the State Bank of India doing business on the African continent. The views there of Pratip Chaudhuri, the chairperson of the State Bank of India, I think it was a poignant thought that he left us with, is that don't ever take things at face value, look for the good in other people, and always strive to delegate. It's been this edition of Captains of Industry. Thank you so much for watching.